All right. Honda Accord says we are here. David Rodriguez. All right. Looks like we're good now. Sorry for that. We had a technical difficulty. So we will start from the top if you don't mind, sir. So
Not at
welcome,
all.
guys and gals. Welcome to Guns and Gadgets. We're back after a second attempt here. I am your host, Jared. If you're new to the channel and you like to find out what the latest happening is regarding the Second Amendment, whether it's good, bad, ugly, or indifferent, I ask you please to consider subscribing to this channel because this is where you're going to find that information. That is the sole purpose of this channel. We do bring you other things such as gun reviews and gear reviews, but the 2A is where it's at for this channel. We now are at another point in our history where a mass shooting has happened, and we are being attacked again by the left. They're salivating every time something happens to take away our rights, and today is no different. That is why we have this special broadcast. I have a special guest for you. This is Mr. Erich Pratt. You've seen him here before. He's the Executive Director of Gun Owners of America. He is taking his valuable time to come tell us exactly what is going on. Mr. Pratt, thank you for your time, sir.
Oh, absolutely. Well, thanks again, Jared. You've got a great channel, very informative. You do good work, buddy. So thanks so much.
Thank you. I appreciate that so much. Before we get into the first question, I want everybody to know that Gun Owners of America is a grassroots organization. They are no nonsense. They take no prisoners. And you really should consider joining Gun Owners of America. They were kind enough to take care of our subscribers and our viewers here. So if you are not a member, I'm a life member. If you're not a member, there's a link in the description of all my videos. It's gunowners.org/gunsgadgets. They will give you $5 off of a 1-year membership. That'll make it $15. It's a couple cups of coffee a month. And I ask you to donate that $5 back to them and then some. They need the money. Everything they do costs money. It doesn't. It's not free to sue in the Supreme Court and to have lawyers working for you. So they could use that. So please help them. With that said, the first question's a big one, sir. Can you tell everybody who's watching and who will watch on the rebroadcast what is going on right now in Capitol Hill? What can GOA and Second Amendment supporters do to stop it? And can we stop it?
Well, a lot going on there. Yeah, there's a lot happening on Capitol Hill. You've got Republicans wilting. You've got anti-gun Democrats on the prowl, on the attack, and you've got the president who 2 years ago was promising gun owners the assault on the Second Amendment has come to a crashing end, and now he's actually pushing his party to accept different gun control proposals and telling the press, yeah, Mitch McConnell will come around, things like that. So this is a real problem. So the other part of your question was, can we stop it? I know as we sit here right now, it probably feels like such a daunting task. How could we ever win? Many of your viewers, and you may remember this too, Jared, but in 2013, after the Sandy Hook shooting, we were pretty much in the same situation where everybody from the right to left, gun owners everywhere were saying, we're ultimately going to lose. This is a no-win battle. And yet we came out of that with not one additional word of gun control. So it can be done. It just means we have to be more vocal than the media is being right now. And, we're right outside the Beltway here in Washington, D.C. And I'll tell you, the echo chamber inside the Beltway is loud. But we've done this before. We can be louder than they are. At Gun Owners, we've already generated over 1 million emails into Senate Republican offices. In a couple days, we're going to start up a real concerted campaign to get phone calls going in. We've already generated some, but get a real concerted campaign for that. So, this is the type of thing. I know it's August. I know, a lot of people are thinking, it's vacation time. But let me tell you, the left is not resting, and neither can we. We've got to stay focused on this and be contacting our senators and congressmen regularly over the next month up until the time that they come back into session. And then we'll redouble our efforts again.
Okay. And they do come back September 9th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So quite a few comments coming and going, but we'll get to those, ladies and gentlemen, in a couple minutes. I do want Mr. Pratt to tell us exactly what we're in for, because his time is precious. So some say, what are the politics that will, or what particular policies or efforts can make a change? Is there something specific that guys and gals, when they call their senators, is there something specific they should hone in on and drive them towards a theme?
Absolutely. Well, the three chief things, first of all, that we're fighting is so-called red flag gun confiscation orders. In addition to universal background checks. I mean, the president has talked about stronger background checks. Not quite sure what he means by that, but the left is taking that to mean universal background checks. And then finally, Mitch McConnell's even said that, a ban on commonly owned firearms, the so-called assault weapons ban, is on the table. So those are the three things that we're fighting. So when people call in, certainly they would want to address those things. And by the way, when people call, and let me give the Senate phone numbers just so people have it. You can call the switchboard at 202-224-3121. And then just ask for your senators. And if you don't know who your senators are, which you should know who your senators are, but you could just say, hey, I'm from Kentucky. Who are my senators? Or, I'm from Alaska. And so they'll tell you, and they'll connect you to the offices. But be respectful. Tell them, you're a voter in their state or district, if it's the congressman's office that you're talking to, and tell them you're a member of Gun Owners of America, or you agree with Gun Owners of America on this, and that's really important too, because we hear all the time, man, up on the Hill. They're telling us you guys are loud. We're here from your members, and so that's good. That gives us a lot more credibility than when we're going and talking to these offices. But just tell them, look, oppose every word of gun control, especially the red flags, because honestly, that's probably the biggest thing that has the greatest likelihood of passing. I mean, obviously, it's being pushed at the state level, and there's a strong push at the national level, and sadly, some of the people who you would think are the pro-gun champions in the House and Senate have been wilting this past week, saying, well, maybe they would consider such a bill. So it's really important to say, especially red flag laws, oppose this. Now, what do we counter with? The biggest thing, they dare not only say, hey, we're just going to have votes on all these anti-gun bills or ideas, and not bring up things like concealed carry reciprocity. This is something that we have been demanding for years. This would make a difference. It would save lives. And so we will really hold them accountable if they're not, if they're so wimpy that they don't even want to bring up these amendments for a vote. So, that's one thing. We need a groundswell of people saying we demand votes on concealed carry reciprocity. That's something that'll make a difference. Or like Thomas Massey's bill from the House to repeal gun-free zones. His bill would do it in the schools. But, that's at least one place to start, because there again, this is legislation that will make a difference. When you look, there's 20 states right now that allow teachers in some way or another, administrators, to have guns in school. And there's one thing that every school that has armed teachers in it has in common, and that is they've never had a mass shooting. Right. Because this is a deterrent. I mean, everybody listening or watching right now knows this. I mean, armed citizens are a deterrent, and we stop crime hundreds of thousands, millions of times every year. Guns are used in self-defense thousands of times a day. So we really need to, urge our senators and representative, demand from the leadership, from the Republican leadership. We want votes on reciprocity. We want on concealed carry reciprocity. We want votes on repealing gun-free zones. And if you're talking to state level officials, you want to talk about constitutional carry. But right now we're focused on at the national level. So I think those are three big things, positive things that we can be articulating, demanding, that will actually make a big difference.
Excellent. That's excellent advice. I got you can't see it where you are, I know, but I put a comment up on the screen. It's from Christopher Tenney. I get this comment a lot, so I figured I'd bounce it off you. Is it better to call, write, or email, or visit your legislators?
Well, that's a great question. Obviously, in descending order, a visit certainly has the most effect, but obviously not everybody can do that. Picking up the phone and calling is probably at the next level, but sadly not everybody is going to do that. Here's how I would encourage people. I know it can be a hassle. Pick up the phone, call your senator or representative, but I look at it this way. Our forefathers, when they were fighting for freedom, they were freezing at Valley Forge barefoot with bandages, things like that. I mean, thankfully, the fight that we're dealing with is nowhere near that. So, right. In comparison, picking up the phone sure seems pretty cozy by comparison. So, please pick up the phone again, 202-224-3121. That's very effective. Then, again, in descending order, you've got, a letter that, somebody sits down and they craft themselves. We've actually found that by putting out pre-written text to people, it actually generates even more individual letters, because people will take what we give them and then they'll bounce, they'll use that as a starting point, and it kind of gets the juices flowing, so it even generates more creative letters. But even if they just, click and send what we've given them, that's important, because that's one more person from the district who's saying, this is my view. I'm identifying with GOA. I'm identifying with the Second Amendment, no on gun control, and I'm a voter in your district or your state. So even if it's the lowest form of activism, being just sending, clicking and sending off pre-written text, that's effective as well. But obviously you have all those other options to you, if you can do it, even scheduling a visit.
And for those who are saying the same thing I'm thinking, Elizabeth Warren, all right, guilty. She is my senator. I still call her. I still email her. I still write her. I know she doesn't care, but she's going to hear it no matter what. So if you have one of those, please still call, still spend 2 minutes of your time emailing, phone calling, or even writing a letter, because they have to log them. If for anything else, it holds a little bit of accountability, because they have to log this stuff.
Well, Jared, and not only that, I mean, let's face it, you're not going to change Elizabeth Warren's mind. I mean, there's some legislators, they're committed against us. But when they get deluged, it does let them see and understand that when other legislators are talking about how much heat they're getting, at least they can't honestly say, well, I'm not hearing from anybody. So, they'll at least be able to understand that, when other legislators are getting, famously, a former senator said, when I feel the heat, I see the light. And so, that's what we specialize in here at GOA, is getting our members, who are voters, to put the heat on these legislators. And that is, has just over the years had a dramatic effect in killing legislation. And so, we're not going to necessarily get every person to change, but at least we can get them to understand the pain that other legislators are going through.
Right. A lot of comments here on the TAPS Act. Do you care to address that and tell how dangerous that could possibly be?
Yeah, I mean, boys, we certainly have concerns about that legislation. I mean, I think right now, given the battles that we're facing, with the direct attacks on our Second Amendment rights, I mean, those are the things that we're focused on. But certainly with, TAPS, there's concerns there, coming up with threat assessment. Right. I mean, these are things that, we find very concerning to our Fourth Amendment, Fifth Amendment rights, ultimately our Second Amendment rights.
Right. We got a couple super chats. For those who are chatting and making comments, I I want to apologize up front. This is a brand new system I'm using. It's Ecamm Live. I don't know how to do this. I just figured out enough to get Eric on here and not look like a bobo here. So please forgive me if I missed some of the comments, especially the super chats. But that one was from Minuteman for Jesus, touching on the TAPS Act. So thank you, sir. Another one's from Scott Sutton. He's inquiring. And I heard this rumor today, so I guess I'll bounce it off. If you haven't heard it, you haven't heard it. I did hear that we might be anticipating an ATF re-ruling in the next 7 to 10 days about pistol braces. Have you heard anything in your neck of the woods?
We're certainly hearing those rumors too. Nothing definitive, but that's something we're going to be looking at and watching for. And and we, more importantly, we have our attorneys already, ready to be looking at this and potentially challenging it. I mean, I think ultimately it underscores why we need to get rid of the NFA. And GOA has challenged the NFA. I mean, sadly, we couldn't get the Supreme Court to grant cert in the Kettler case. And that was such a perfect case. Here you had a veteran who, following the laws of the state of Kansas, had purchased a suppressor, and he didn't fill out the paperwork pursuant to the laws of Kansas because it was a suppressor that was made in the state and was going to stay in the state. And anyway, Obama's ATF prosecuted him, or the Justice Department did. And thankfully, at least he's not in jail. But he still does have a felony record. That's very sad. But anyway, we tried to take that all the way up to the Supreme Court to get him cleared and also challenge the NFA. Again, the Supremes wouldn't grant cert, but we'll be looking for other cases to challenge the NFA as well.
Excellent. Brian Duchesne had a comment here, and I'm going to address that real quick. The super chats, for those of you who are watching, what they are is a donation to the channel. The super chats for this episode are going right to GOA. It's going to be a donation on behalf of Guns and Gadgets and its viewers. So if you are watching, feel free to make a donation, and it's all going to the fight for the Second Amendment. So thank you all for your generosity. Eric, what do you think? I mean, we chat before we go live, and we kind of see things the same. But for those who are watching, why do you think the media is so anti-gun, and why are they so biased?
Well, when you look at studies that have been done on the media, I mean, it's like 80% of journalists hold anti-gun positions. They favor gun bans and things like that. So it's not a surprise that you've got such a one-sided, slanted coverage in the national media. I mean, I think, first of all, it underscores, and why I'm so glad that there's channels like yours, Jared, and, you've got, the rise of, what you might call the alternate media. That is all super important so that there's not this monopoly chokehold. But I think we're all familiar with and sensitive to the way that this bias works. A week ago, CNN, boy, they jumped on the chance and they had this national town hall. And the whole entire time, they've got on the lower third, they're calling it the gun crisis. And, look, obviously, anytime any tool is used in the commission of a crime and somebody is killed, I mean, that is a tragic event. But to call it a gun crisis, when guns are being used more often every day to save life, I mean, it's just simply disingenuous. It would be like saying, gee, we have, 65 people a day who are dying by doctors' negligence. And that's what it is, 250,000 a year, 65 a day. So imagine, having you just 24/7 coverage of all these, medical mistakes, giving the wrong treatment or dosages, or, the wrong operation to the wrong person, all these types of, I mean, people would be scared to go see a doctor if that's what, they were, being fed. And, we would have this medical crisis. But of course we know, yeah, come on, how silly is that? Doctors actually, are saving far more lives. Well, see, that's that's what this bias does. They take maybe true statements like the number of times people are killed using a gun, but they pull that out of any context whatsoever, including the fact that, according to the CDC, guns are used 16 to 100 times more often to save life. But see, none of that gets presented. So, in terms of media bias, I mean, that's why we're here. That's why you're here, Jared. I mean, that's why we talk about, defensive gun uses. All these things are important part of the education because, sadly, more and more states are making law by referendum. And ultimately, already we're seeing in states like Washington and California and other states, they're starting to pass major gun control packages at the ballot box. And so, education has to be a big part of what we do.
Excellent. Yeah, that's spot on. I mean, and another conversation I was having today in the same ballpark is the U.S. isn't even in the top 5, 10 of per capita mass shootings, and the way the left wants it to sound is like where all that is happening in the world as far as mass shooting, but it's nowhere even close. Correct?
You're absolutely right. I've been on 2 national talk shows recently, and twice I've mentioned that. And the first time, it was actually, and so I won't mention his name, but he's actually a rather conservative talk show host. And when I said that the United States is not even in the top 50 for per capita mass shootings, it startled him. And then I was on Fox News on Laura Ingram's Fox News Friday night, this past Friday. And of course, when I mentioned that, the guy was like, "Oh no, it's not true," but it's true. I mean, that is the facts. And so, but the reason, the average person may not, may not resonate is because you're more likely to only hear about mass shootings in this country. I mean, right. They're occurring in other countries, but they're not being reported here. And plus, there is the aspect, and this is why we talk about per capita, mass shooting victims or mass shootings per 100,000. Because let's face it, we live in a big country, which means that we have more of everything. We have more drownings, we have more car accidents, we have more, people dying of heart attacks. I mean, in every way, the numbers are higher because we are one of the most populous nations on earth. So again, it's disingenuous when the other side, they'll compare us to, like some small country in Europe. It's like, oh, well, that's a fair comparison. Right. Like they'll compare us to England or something like that. But but when you actually look at per capita, actually the United States is a very safe comparatively. In fact, we're not even in the top 100 when it comes to murder rates. Anyway, again, this is part of the context that's left out, Jared.
Yeah, facts schmacks. Val Finnell saying hi, your director from Pennsylvania.
Yes. Hey there, Val. Good man.
So
he's doing good work.
Let's one of the questions we had was what's the number one fight? Like, what are we going to go after first? I would think that probably the biggest threat to the Second Amendment as we know it's going to be the red flag.
You're absolutely right. Yeah.
We got 17 states plus the district have all forced it in, and literally I was sitting at my desk this morning, and there are 4 states around the country right now where the red flag bill or ERPO or whatever they call it in that state, it's been in committee, and there are states actually filing emergency petitions to get them out and get them voted on now. So there's a huge full court press to get this through. We've seen Trump ask for it. We've heard his whole take the guns first, due process second. We've seen AG Barr ask for them. We've seen the school committee ask for them. What do you think? Is that our biggest fight? And if you think
it is,
yes, which version do you think they're going to lock on to? Is it going to be the Graham and Blumenthal one?
That's probably what they're going to come out with. It hasn't been written yet. This is something we have in every state that doesn't yet have a red flag law. We have fought this. GOA has been there rallying the troops to oppose this in state legislatures across the country. And so far, over 30 states have rejected this.
Right.
So now here at the federal level, I mean, this would be a huge blow. They want to create this pot of money, which is what Graham Blumenthal would do, create a big pot of money to bribe the states into passing red flag laws. And boy, if they're successful in doing that, that would make it very difficult or increase the difficulty of killing it at the state level. But it's interesting because they say that, on the one hand, but then on the other, kind of out of the other side of their mouth, they say, but, Graham is talking about, but this is going to have due process protections and things like that. Well, then you just said your bill will not fund any current state or any state that is talked about having red flags, because
Right.
there is not one of the 17 states that has a red flag law that has due process prior to the person's guns being taken away. And of course, that's the problem with red flags. When anybody who says, any Republican who says, oh, this might be a compromised position that, is okay. Absolutely not, because you're talking about throwing constitutional protections out the window to take away people's liberties, grab their guns, that it could just be based on somebody's upset with you and they want to get revenge against you. So they file a complaint and then, without a trial by jury, without having your attorney present, without facing your accuser, just an ex parte order. In other words, only one party gets listened to, the party that's making the accusation against
Right.
you. They send a team of police to grab your firearms, and that can be deadly. I mean, I think by now a lot of gun owners are familiar with the very sad, tragic case that happened in Maryland, where Gary Willis had a family argument with a relative, and as an act of revenge, the relative filed for a red flag order under Maryland's law. They showed up at his home at 5:17. The police showed up at 5:17 a.m. He answered the door with a gun in his hand, and he was shot dead. This is very tragic. I mean, there's absolutely, the first time you find out that there's been a red flag order filed against you is when the police show up. And a lot of times, they do it in the early morning hours. So this is just not a winning way of really keeping the peace. And so anyway, this is going to be the number one fight that we're looking at, Jared. We don't know all the particulars that are going to be in the bill yet because it hasn't been filed yet. But anytime you hear Graham or others, Lindsey Graham of South Carolina, talking about, well, don't worry, it'll have due process, just know that's a lie, because then otherwise it won't have funded, it can't fund any of the states that have talked about having red flag laws, because none of them have due process protection.
Right, exactly. And you mentioned the case in Baltimore where the gentleman was murdered because his sister, I think it was his sister, didn't like him or had an argument that night. Now, that is something that you specifically mentioned in your letter on the website, that you would like people to go to the website and to fill out to send to the president. Would you mind taking a second and tell everybody about that?
Yeah, so we have a couple different alerts that are up on our site. One is a letter to President Trump. The other is gets you to send letters to your senators. I would encourage everyone, take action on both of these. This is really important. Trump needs to hear from us. And so do our senators. Again, we've already generated over 1 million letters to Republican offices. So this is really important because they need to hear from us. We generated thousands upon thousands as well to the White House. And that's crucial, too, because the president does keep tabs on grassroots action that's coming into the through the phone lines or otherwise, because I've heard him talk about this on other issues, especially the immigration issue. Talk about, what I was talking about is, people are calling in support, and they're calling the White House line and they're in support of this. So it's obvious that this type of activity bubbles up and they tell the president, yay or nay, how things are going. So it's important that he hears from us. Don't think, he's already, determined to, to push for this, so my phone call or my email message isn't going to make a difference. Absolutely not. We've actually seen him backtrack on things before. So let's just lay it out on the line. Pick up the phone, but you have those two alerts there. You can just easily, even before we're done with this show here, you can already send off your letters to both places, to the president and to the Republican senators on Capitol Hill.
Yeah, for those who haven't done it, it literally takes 30 seconds each one. You put in your name, your address, and it's a form letter. You can edit it if you want, or you can leave it as is and just send it off. So it's a very good tool to flood the offices of those who need it to be flooded. And Mr. Trump is a businessman. If we can get him to realize this is political suicide, and he really wants a second term, I think that he will change his mind. That's my hope. What do you think?
Yes, and on that message, I think that is really important. That's one thing that we've been really hammering. And I'm glad to see that there's others that are hammering this too. I mean, we were talking before the show, we're getting help from unexpected places, like Rush Limbaugh has been hammering this point, that this could be the read my lips debacle that George Bush waded into when, he gave that tax pledge and then reneged on it and ended up losing the election. And most people attribute it to his breaking his word on the tax pledge. And, it doesn't take a lot of people to say, and by the way, the gun issue is one of the most motivating factors for pro-gunners in the voting booth. I mean, that's been well documented. Bill Clinton, usually this has been something that's really pinged the Democrats. And Bill Clinton lamented several times that his pushing gun control cost him the majority of the Congress. For the first time in a generation in 1994, it went Republican. The Al Gore campaign lamented that it was the gun issue that cost their boss the election in 2000. Hillary made gun control a huge part of, like one of her chief cornerstones in her campaign. And it didn't help her. And here's the thing. It only takes just a small percentage of the base. The states of Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin, those three states, less than 80,000 votes help make the margin in those three states. I mean, there's almost 30 million people that live in those states. You do the math, 80,000 votes. I mean, that's less than 1% of the population of those states. If you have pro-gun Democrats living out in rural areas who in the last election said, man, there's a huge difference on the gun issue, I'm going with the pro-gunner. If now they're looking and they're saying, you know what, there's really not that much difference on this issue, I'll just go back to voting for the Democrat candidate, which they're normally comfortable voting for. It doesn't take many of those to throw the election. And by the way, I mean, we have a real live example in the state right next to you. Senator Kelly Ayotte is not a senator today, and it probably is because of I would argue it is because of the gun issue. She went south on the gun issue. Prominent group in the state, gun group, rated her a D, legitimately so, based on her atrocious voting record on guns. And it was a very narrow election. She lost by 1,017 votes.
Right.
That's all it took. It was close. It doesn't take everybody. I mean, some people I know will go into the voting booth holding their nose, but I know there were many others who said, I'm either staying home or I'm voting third party. And it doesn't take many. And so anyway, that is the message. I went on Fox News driving this point. Rush Limbaugh picked it up yesterday. I actually aired my appearance on Fox News to talk about this. I mean, hopefully this is resonating with Republican legislators. They need to realize, read my lips. This is very serious. This could be the issue that many people just say, oh, forget you guys. I'm, staying home or voting third party. That could have disastrous consequences. I mean, they need to understand, there's the Constitution, and the Constitution protects this right, so don't touch it. But they also need, for their own self-interest point of view, need to understand you're not going to gain any love from your political opponents by spitting in the faces of your base. It doesn't work that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Before I ask the next question, I want to remind everybody, if you're not a member of Gun Owners of America, please join. We are in a time where we need as many people fighting for us, and GOA is no compromise. They take no prisoners, and that is exactly what we need on the federal level. You can't say that for many of them that are out there, and we all know who we're talking about. So gunowners.org/gunsgadgets. It gives you a $5 discount, $15 for a year membership. I get $0 for everybody who's thinking he's a FUD, he's just selling. I get zero. Take that extra $5, donate it back, and then some. And as a reminder, every single dollar from the super chat that makes it to our channel today is going to be donated to Gun Owners of America. So thank you to the viewers. They're coming left and right. So thank you guys.
Thank you, Jared.
It's very, very honor. I'm very honored that I can do this for our viewership. So what do you think? What should be the first order? The average person is watching this and maybe decides, because of what we are saying, I want to help. What should be the first thing they do? What is a roadmap for somebody who maybe doesn't do this on a regular? Where can they start?
Well, I think there's strength in numbers, obviously. So first thing I would say, go to our website at gunowners.org and sign up for our email alerts. They're free. So we can keep you informed. And therefore, when we're doing these campaigns and generating over 1 million messages into Republican offices, it has an impact. I mean, one letter on its own on a particular issue, I mean, certainly they have to come up with a response for that in that legislative office. But when they're getting slammed and flooded, it grabs their attention. So, certainly the minimum level, I would say, but it's really important, is just, get our alerts so that we can keep you informed. And then, I would say get others. You've got pro-gun family and friends, recruit them as well to start getting these alerts, because that's all very a real important part of the fight. We can't do this alone up here. I mean, look, we're not up here getting these congressmen to change their mind by whining and dining them. That's not our method of lobbying. Our method of lobbying is telling you guys, here's what they're doing, and they're screwing things up. You guys either vote for them or fire them, and they know that, so you need to get in touch with them, and that's what we do well, is making it very easy. Jared, you were saying just a few moments ago, we make it easy. You can do it in less than 30 seconds to get connected and just send off an email to these folks. That's the lowest level of action. I mean, obviously, there's other things that greatly help. Joining up with GOA, $15 through your very generous offer there. There's Patriot membership, where people can be monthly, sign up to contribute monthly, and that brings additional benefits as well. There's Life membership as well. But all these things can be really important. Here's one that's kind of fun. I know some people don't like going on Amazon because the founder and owner is so anti-gun. But you know what? He contributes to a lot of our legal cases, because if you go through Amazon Smile, a portion of your purchase, whatever it is, goes to Gun Owners Foundation, and that helps fund our legal battles. So, he may not agree with us, but he is helping fund our legal battles, and so we're very grateful for that. And so you guys can help with that. If you do use Amazon, make sure you do it through Amazon Smile. Just select Gun Owners Foundation as the recipient. By the way, this is at no cost to you. It's a portion of it's still the same price, whatever you're buying. It's just that a portion of that will then go to Gun Owners Foundation.
Yeah, it's an excellent way to raise some money. So another thing we've seen is that, Mr. Trump has called Wayne in to talk to him, and he's reached out to Alan Gottlieb of Second Amendment Foundation. Have they ever reached out to GOA?
I haven't talked to Trump personally, but we have actually some in our organization have. So I'm just talking about me. So yes, we actually have spoken with him personally, not within the last week, but we are in contact with the important personnel in the White House, and these are the ones that are shaping the policy. There's also been those here in the leadership that have talked to some of his sons as well. So anyway, we have inroads there, but at the same time, it's a very divided family and divided White House. Right. In as much as we have an ear of a lot of the personnel there, there's others that have a more mainstream rhino, Republican in name only, establishment attitude. You've got Ivanka, who reportedly is actually making phone calls to the Senate, urging them to pass red flags. So, that's the interesting thing. I mean, he's, the president sitting here in the midst of really like warring factions, even in his own family. That's why, again, it all comes back to you, the voter. It's really important to contact the White House and register your opposition to what he's pushing. Tell them no on, no additional word of gun control. I mean, look, we want to repeal gun control, but right now we're facing additional gun control. No additional gun control. And in fact, if you're communicating with the president, remind him of things that he said in the past. That, hey, if there were more good guys there at the scene of the crime, there would have been bullets flying back at the bad guys. I miss that Donald Trump. I mean, that's the Donald Trump that I think won a lot of people's hearts, and they felt comfortable as gun owners voting for him because he did talk about supporting reciprocity, and he did talk about repealing gun-free zones. Sadly, we haven't seen that Trump in the last week, but we need to remind him of that. We can even use some of the things that he said in the past.
Yeah, like lock her up. I know your time is precious and you only have a couple more minutes. I got a bunch of comments here and a bunch of messages in the last couple of days. What is the GOA's point of view with Chucky Schumer now trying to limit the citizens' access to body armor?
Well, what would you expect from Chucky Schumer?
Yeah.
Right? Look, why shouldn't people have a right to defend themselves and protect themselves with body armor? So, that's not something that, any pro-freedom loving American should support.
Absolutely. All right. So I've kept you to the limit that I promised. I know you're very, very busy. So I will free you from this obligation, sir. Thank you.
Not an obligation. This was a pleasure, Jared. Thank you so much. And again, thank you so much for what you're doing. You do a great job covering issues and informing people in a very, not being sensational and just presenting the facts. And so I really appreciate that.
Thank you. I really appreciate your time, sir. Please, let's do it again. And again,
absolutely.
One more time, guys and gals, if you make a donation super chat wise to this video, it's going to GOA. And if you don't and you're watching the rebroadcast, please join. You can use the link in my description, gunowners.org/gunsgadgets, or you can go right to their website and donate there. You can pick a denomination. If you have a little bit of spare change, throw it at them because it's going to good use. So thank you again, sir. I appreciate your time. And like I always say, be safe, stay vigilant, and carry a weapon. Good night, everybody.